Important documents in the history of the United States. Some of these include the Declaration of Independence, the Articles of Confederation, the Louisiana Purchase Treaty, the Constitution of the United States, and of course many more that have shaped the formation of this great nation. These documents gave us our independence, the land that makes up the nation, and sets the rules for governing it. But what about the people that live in the United States? The framers of the Constitution purposefully left out the rights of the people because they didn't want Congress to have control over them like the British government. Thereby lies the reason for the Bill of Rights. The Bill of Rights should serve as a constant reminder of the deep distrust that our founding fathers had of the government. They knew that some government was necessary, but they rightfully saw the government as the enemy of the people, and they sought to limit the government and provide us with protection. The Bill of Rights is a group of articles that makes up the first 10 amendments to the Constitution and guarantees the personal rights of every citizen in the United States.
The Bill of Rights establishes many important personal rights, such as the right to bear arms, the right to due process of law, and the rights of an accused person. But the fundamentals lie in the First Amendment to the Constitution. This states that Congress shall make no law respecting an establishment of religion, or prohibiting the free exercise thereof, or abridging the freedom of speech, or of the press, or the right of the people peaceably to assemble, and to petition the government for a redress of grievances.
All of these rights are very important, but let's focus on the freedom of press. The freedom of press is defined as the right to publish newspapers, magazines, and other printed matter without government restrictions, and subject only to the laws of libel, slander, obscenity, sedition, and etc.
While such freedoms expressed in the freedom of press mostly implies protection from the interference of an overreaching state, its preservation may be sought through constitutional or other legal protections. That being said, this freedom has been challenged a number of times throughout the history of the United States, even to the extent of a Supreme Court case. Such was the case in the Supreme Court ruling in the New York Times Co. versus United States in 1971. This was a landmark decision by the United States Supreme Court on the First Amendment regarding freedom of the press.
The Pentagon Papers, a then classified study of the Vietnam War, was carried out by the United States Department of Defense, officially known as the History of the U.S. Decision-Making Process on Vietnam Policy, were illegally copied and then leaked to the press. The New York Times and the Washington Post had obtained these documents from an illegal source. Acting by government and President Nixon's executive authority, the United States District Court in New York issued a temporary injunction. In other words, a court order that prevented the New York Times from publishing the documents. The federal government claimed that the publication of the papers would endanger the security of the United States and upset the people. The New York Times appealed to the order for the United States Supreme Court, arguing that it violated the First Amendment.
The question before the Supreme Court was whether the constitutional freedom of the press, guaranteed by the First Amendment, was subordinate to a claimed need of the executive branch of government, in other words, the President of the United States, to maintain the secrecy of information.
Good evening, Mr. Brown. Do you have the papers for me?
Yes, I've got them right here. I need the whole world to see them. I've been out there in Vietnam, and the people have got to know.
Let me see. The Pentagon Papers. Thank you, Mr. Brown. These are going straight to press. Good day.
Come in. Mr. President, I have important news. Yes, the Pentagon Papers have been leaked to the New York Times. They will be out to be published tomorrow morning for the Sunday paper.
Those papers will never see the light of day as long as I am in office. That would be a breach of national security. Agent Jamison, you must stop them.
As per your request, Mr. President.
Thank you.
Are you Arthur Sulzberger?
Depends on who's asking. What's going on here?
I believe you have something that I need.
What might that be?
The Pentagon Papers. You have no right to have those in your possession.
That's outrageous! I'll see you in court.
I am the Judge Murray Griffin. To assist in the final decision, I will communicate with Chief Justice Mr. Berger and Justice Mr. Black. The Supreme Court will now hear the case. The New York Times versus the United States. The prosecutor is a representative of President Nixon. The defendant is Arthur Sulzberger of the New York Times. After discussion and consideration of the papers, freedom of press will be protected under First Amendment and acts as a check against the government. 6-3 decision in favor of the lower court.
In a 6-3 decision, the Supreme Court agreed with the two lower courts, which had originally decided that the government had not justified its restraint. The court issued a very brief per curiam opinion, stating that the court concurred with the decisions of the two lower courts to reject the government's request for an injunction. The justices' opinions included different degrees of support for the clear superiority of the First Amendment, and no justice fully supported the government's case.
The Supreme Court ruled that the First Amendment did protect the right of the New York Times to print the materials, and the significance of the case and the wording of the justices' opinions have added important statements to the history of precedents for the exceptions to the First Amendment,